That's an absolutely massive shock result.
I think this is a big setback for Manchester City. I think it's probably just what the tournament needed, a real upset.
This is a very good team with very good players, an extremely good manager. Hold on a minute, Al-Hilal could go all the way here.
I think this is a massive result for the Saudi Pro League. I mean, I've been the first to deride it and obviously suggesting that players and managers are going there for the money. But this is a performance that does make you sit up and take notice.
First half, or certainly the Juventus game, made me feel like the City of 2 years ago. That second half made me feel like I'm watching the City of last season.
Ultimately, they've conceded 6 goals in 2 games as soon as they've bumped into anyone that's any good.
Yeah, and I think it still tells you they're a work in progress.
But I do want to highlight Phil Foden's finish. It was almost like we were seeing Phil Foden at his very best again, and we've seen that a couple of times on this tour. Chelsea now the only English club left in the competition. They had a 2-hour weather delay, came back and finished it, and then it went crackers.
One of the strangest games I've ever been involved in. It is an absolute shambles. If anything, I saw sunlight come out. Honestly, it was farcical.
The big questions are remaining about hosting the tournament.
It's a problem. It's another problem that FIFA basically have selected the wrong venue for the World Cup. It shouldn't be being played in America in the summer.
You can't have an event where you don't create the conditions for the players to play at the highest level. Otherwise, you're undermining your own tournament. It's Premier League All Access with me, Sam Matterface, Scott Minto and Alex Crook. Scott Minto is inside, but he's wearing his shades, and that's because we're enjoying the heatwave in all different parts of the world, right? I'm in Switzerland ahead of the Women's Euros. I'm in Thun, just by the banks of Lake Thun. There's 2 swans gliding perfectly, rather regally, down the middle of the lake away to my left-hand side in this wonderful old medieval town. Crook is somewhere in Spain looking like a lobster because he spent too much time in the sunshine yesterday. Now he's telling me, Scott, that actually he was sitting in the shade, he was being very sensible, but I know what he's like. I know that he forgets time, space, where he is when he's had a few glasses of the local delicacy. And after a spout of sangria yesterday, I think he may have fell asleep in the sunshine. I mean, I'm just guessing.
Do you know what? First of all, I've got these glasses on, not because it's still absolutely roasting in England, but it's because I've only had 2 hours sleep from working on the Manchester City game. And obviously you guys wanted to do the 8:30. My eyes are all over the place. And I just thought I'd join you as well in the sunglasses because it's glorious weather out there. But I'm pretty sure that he sort of lay on the beach thinking, yeah, I can do this. I'm Alex Crook. Doesn't the sun know who I am? There's only one winner there. And then suddenly the sun's just gone, no, you ain't going to beat Mother Nature. Here's a little lesson for you.
It's a big lesson. It's flashing red, a warning sign. So
I think today is a day to spend in the pub and not on the beach.
Have you got some after sun on that, right?
Do you know what? The missus offered me some after sun, right? And she gave me such a tiny little amount, I covered one arm. And they said, oh, you can't have any more, I need it. Oh, thanks, love. That's really going to help in the morning. So one arm feels all right. The rest of my body is baking. Honestly, it was the hottest day I've ever experienced yesterday. On the beach here in beautiful Palma. There was no breeze at all. The world is melting.
Are you incapable of walking to the chemist and getting yourself some after sun? It's like, I'm sure there's shops in Palma.
Well, I had a bit of a cough and I got charged €20 for some cough mixture. I wasn't going to go there and get screwed over again.
I'll tell you what, though, Sammy, he's living the life out there, isn't he? He sent us pictures when he was in Portugal. He sent us pictures when he was on a boat, almost making it look like it was his own sort of yacht. And now he's in Palma, giving it large on the beach. He's some boy, that Alex Crook.
I'm going to tell you this right now. If I get another half-naked picture of him with a big picture of beer in his hand, I'm blocking him on WhatsApp. I'm fed up with them, all right? Let's get back to the football because Manchester City were blocked in terms of their progress in the Club World Cup overnight. They were beaten by Al-Hilal by 4-3. Their dream of ending the silverware drought that they went through last season is over. Absolute thriller of a game in Orlando overnight. And Scott, you were working on it. The conversation that we had on Friday, which was, are City back? And you said, even after one game, Sam, I think they are back. I think they are back. Well, that lasted a long time.
Do you know what? In my 2 hours sleep, I think I had a dream thinking, I wonder if Sam remembers what I said about Manchester City being back. Honestly, I worked on the game and it was just an amazing game. if the Club World Cup needed a sort of a one game to show that this is what we can talk about in years to come until the next one, it's this one. Look, I genuinely thought, and that's why I, at the time when I was speaking with you, I put a caveat and say, look, I don't judge on one game, but I kind of did. And they were really good in the first half, and Al-Hilal were almost just hanging on in there by their fingertips to make sure that they're not out of the game. And at 1-0 at half time, sort of saying, this is a really good game. I was working with Nigel Adderley. We both expect City to go through, but they're doing really well. Honestly, that point in the start of the second half, I don't know what it was. They just seemed seemed unprofessional. That this team, it's almost under 10s where, like, go out second half, really go for it first 5 minutes and see what happens. Suddenly, bang, bang, they're 2-1 down and they're right up against it. Look, Al-Hilal got some really good players, and I said from the start, look, I fancy City to win this game, but it will not be easy. But they're almost a better side than Juventus. But honestly, that second half, like the first half, certainly the Juventus game, made me feel like the City of 2 years ago. That second half made me feel like I'm watching the City of last season.
We'll talk about the wider context and where it leaves City a little bit later on. But Bono, who is an excellent goalkeeper, by the way, he was on the books of Atletico Madrid for many, many years. He played for Sevilla, nearly 100 appearances for them. Girona, he made some great saves in this game from Gundogan and from Savinho. But I did always feel as if they were a little bit of a threat, especially on the break. And that goal after 41 seconds of the second half, and then the Malcolm breakaway, City getting done on the break again. Really poor. And I think it highlights two big problems. The first goal, Ederson pushing it into the path of Leonardo about 6 yards out. That's poor goalkeeping. And that's not the first time we've seen that from him. And then the second goal comes from the breakaway, and there's so much space for them to run into. And actually, again, I was talking to someone earlier on today, and we were saying, just look at Ederson's position. He sort of starts high, drops back, then goes out again, but then makes the forward's mind up for himself by creating the angle and inviting him to put it in that corner. Whereas if he stays a little bit deeper and moves over towards his near post, with the defender coming across, it makes it a lot harder for him to squeeze it into the far corner. But look, once you're in that situation, you've conceded 2 goals again, it becomes a sort of non-stop fight once more. I mean, the other goals weren't particularly great either. But I do want to highlight Phil Foden's finish from a terrific ball into the box. His finish was absolutely terrific. And it was almost like we were seeing Phil Foden at his very best again. And we've seen that a couple of times on this tour, I think, that he's played quite well. But where does it leave Guardiola? Where does it leave Manchester City? Because there are a few positive signs, but ultimately they've conceded 6 goals in 2 games as soon as they've bumped into anyone that's any good, Crook.
Yeah, and I think it still tells you they're a work in progress. If you look at the recruitment policy, they're signing young, up-and-coming players. I think Liverpool, to this point, have had a much better transfer window, and they were obviously already ahead of Guardiola's side last season, so I think we have to make them firm favourites. The goalkeeping situation is an interesting one, because you've been calling out Ederson probably for a good year on this podcast. It looks like he is going to sign a new contract, so I don't think replacing him as number one is a priority. I think he has become a bit of an Achilles heel when you look how good Alisson is, and he's got competition now from Mamardashvili. David Raya had another excellent season. I think City are behind in that department. You mentioned the turnover of possession. That was a problem throughout last season. We thought Rodri back in the team might be able to resolve that. Obviously, he's picked up a fresh injury issue. And the word that Pep Guardiola used when he was explaining the defeat was ruthless. We weren't ruthless enough. And again, how often did we say that over the course of the last season? So I think this is a big, big setback for Manchester City. I think it's probably just what the tournament needed, a real upset, although I'm not sure the television companies will be overly enamoured that Manchester City are no longer part of their jamboree this summer. But we're going to get at least one non-European team now in the semi-final.
Scott, Alex is absolutely right, isn't he? There's almost a sense of, oh, it's great, there's an upset, we can talk about this for ages, this is a brilliant story. Al-Hilal, Saudi Arabian team, beating the team that just a year or so ago won the treble, or 2 years ago won the treble. This is fantastic, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, actually, for the tournament going forward, it is a bit of a kick in the knackers.
Maybe, like any tournament, you sort of want the big boys towards the end. But I've said for some time, and working on the game, the pictures were going to Infantino towards the end, and he didn't seem happy. And yet, I would have thought the last thing he wanted was, sort of 4 semi-finalists all being European.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just the Champions League. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I actually think it is a good thing for the competition. And yeah, of course you want the big boys, but there's enough big boys still left in there. I mean, what I would say is my initial reaction was, this is great for Chelsea, and now I'm thinking, or within a couple of seconds, I'm thinking, hold on a minute, Al-Hilal could go all the way here. Obviously, Chelsea need to get past Palmeiras first, but if they did meet Al-Hilal in the semi-final, tell you what, I worked on the Real Madrid game. I've worked on the Manchester City game. This is a very good team with very good players, an extremely good manager who's only been there 2 minutes, but looks like he's been there for 2 or 3 years.
Well, that's, I think, worth sort of highlighting, isn't it? The fact that Inzaghi has come in from Inter Milan over the course of a very short period of time, like literally a matter of weeks, and has hit the ground running. It shows what a fantastic coach he is, but also that the setup was right in the first place.
Yeah, and it was a big coup, wasn't it, for the Saudi Pro League to get him? They were flirting with a lot of high-profile managers, not least Fulham's Marco Silva, who held conversations with them. But to pluck a manager who'd taken a team to 2 Champions League finals, I think is massive. And I think this is a massive result for the Saudi Pro League. I mean, I've been the first to deride it, and obviously suggesting the players and managers are going there for the money. But this is a performance that does make you sit up and take notice, and probably the biggest result in Saudi football history since their national team beat Argentina at the World Cup in Qatar.
Yep, and that was a terrific moment as well. I happened to be in the stadium for that one, was commentating on it live, and it was an amazing achievement for their national team, and I'm sure that this one will be talked about for a very long time. For Manchester City, it does mean that they get July off, which might be a good thing in terms of their title hopes for next season, because it will mean now, Scott, that their players get a proper rest.
Yeah, I do think, as much as Pep would be annoyed that they're not in the competition, anytime you're in a competition, you want to win it. And I do feel out of the 2 English clubs, Manchester City and Chelsea, City are more built to deal with that because of, the quality of depth and also the experience that they've got. But, I still can't get over it. That's an absolutely massive shock result. And, Crookie's right in what he's saying about, in terms of the Saudi league. But they have gone for the money. I mean, there's no question they have, but there's enough people who's gone for the money for a good manager to gel into a very good side. And I genuinely think, with what I've seen now of the 2 games that I've done with them, they absolutely have the capabilities to go all the way. But in terms of City, yeah, I mean, look, I try and look for any positive out of a negative. And that is okay, listen, chaps, go away, have a good few weeks off. They're going to have to work out pre-season. I don't know if they've already sorted that yet or what they're going to do because they didn't know how far they're going to go into the competition. But at least they will have a bit of a break. And towards the end of next season, I think that's going to be absolutely massive. I really do.
Yep. It could end up helping them out actually in the long run, but it's not going to help them out this summer. Chelsea now the only English club left in the competition, and they're already in the quarterfinals, but their journey to get there was, let's just say, a little treacherous. Scott Minto, who has been working like a Trojan on the Club World Cup, was due to complete his stint at 11 o'clock English time on Saturday night, and ended up still at talkSPORT Towers at about 4 o'clock in the morning. This was because there was absolute chaos in the middle of this match. I say middle, that's an absolute lie. At the end of this match, Chelsea were 4 minutes away. I was in St George's Park. I'd just watched the England under-21s win the tournament. I'd done the Disability Cup finals during the day. We watched the Benfica-Chelsea game, the second half of that game, and I thought, this is done and dusted. Come on, Chelsea, you're through to the quarterfinals. This is good. It's not the easiest game. It wasn't a brilliant match, and it was almost on a knife edge at certain times. And you had sent us a message at half time, I think, Scott, saying 1 goal will finish this, and it looked like that goal had finished it. And then with 4 minutes before the end of the game, literally 4 minutes before the end of the game, they call a halt to proceedings because there is bad weather in the area, which could cause problems for the players because there might be a thunderstorm and a bit of lightning. Now, I understand that player welfare is really important, but they then stayed on pitches where I was watching it for at least 10 minutes in which there was no inclement weather, right? And during that period, they could have finished the game. They didn't. They had a 2-hour weather delay, came back and finished it, and then it went crackers, Scott. Then it just went absolute crackers.
Right. So first of all, one goal was going to win it, and it was a really good Reece James goal actually. And the Benfica goalie Trubin had been playing really well all tournament and really well in that game. But it was a sneaky little free kick, really well executed from Reece James. They had one shot on target in those 85 minutes, 85, 86 minutes, Benfica. So Chelsea had pretty much them under control. Honestly, I've got to choose my words carefully here because I know we have a fantastic editor, and I'm trying to make sure he doesn't overwork here with the choice of words. But it is an absolute shambles that with 4 minutes to go, not an inkling of bad weather in eyesight, that within an 8-mile radius there was some lightning going on, and obviously the protocol is 30 minutes, right? You'd know nothing for 30 minutes. But within those 30 minutes, so it could be 29 minutes, if there's a little bit of lightning 7.9 miles away, it resets again for another 30 minutes. So we're looking at pictures every 30 minutes, or we're hearing there's, it's another 30 minutes, it's another 30 minutes. And I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, they must be thinking here, what are we going to do? And I don't know, but I'm pretty sure a FIFA delegate has turned around and said, listen, guys, we can't keep on going here. We just play the game. If anything, I saw sunlight come out. Honestly, it was farcical.
What time was it local time? By the time this all happens, we're talking, what was it, the next day? What's happening here? I mean, it's crazy. This is a game that ends up going on for, 6 hours? The event goes on for 6 hours or something ridiculous.
Well, I got home at 3:00 in the morning, and I don't live a million miles away. Had to get an Uber because there were no trains or tubes at that time. But it was, again, to what you said about carnage afterwards. We were saying to ourselves, Benfica are going to get a goal here. Something's going to happen because they didn't do anything in the 86 minutes. I loved my time at Benfica, but I was disappointed with them. And then, of course, that sort of handball, which was just so innocuous, but to the letter of the law, they obviously go with it. And then suddenly it's like, oh my goodness, Benfica are back in this game. What are Chelsea going to do? So, of course, Benfica get a guy sent off. That was absolutely massive. Christopher Nkunku, not been particularly great in a Chelsea shirt, but did well to make it 2-1. And then it was over. 4-1, didn't make a justified scoreline, but Chelsea were the better side. But honestly, mate, it was one of the strangest games I've ever been involved in.
Yeah, it was very, very weird. And Enzo Moresca comments on the conditions, calling it an absolute joke, said the USA is the wrong country to be hosting the tournament. And look, we obviously had the fallout. It's been a few days since the game, so everybody knows what happened in the match and whatever. But I suppose the big questions are remaining about hosting the tournament. And I saw a professor come out today of sports science and physiology suggest that we're stuck in this situation where next year we're hosting a World Cup in a country which is going to suffer these problems. So broadcasters have got to understand that is going to be the case. So from a televisual point of view, that is a real problem, because I was talking to the guys. I'm out here with ITV doing the Women's European Championships, and we were saying that is a kind of game that we would pick to put on 9:00 Saturday night, prime time audience. That would be on ITV1. What do you do when that happens? We're going to have to think seriously about how you handle that, because it's not like you can go to an episode of Catchphrase or something like that, because what if they come back out again? You've got to get straight back on to the pitch. So you're going to end up in a situation where you've got lots and lots of times during the course of next summer's tournament where you're going to have these delays where we're going to have to sit on pitches or sit in a debate, and the schedules are going to go out the window. I mean, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing for television, because I suppose it extends the viewing figures and the time that you're on air, so therefore the advertising revenue might go up. I don't know. I can't work it out whether it is a good thing or a bad thing. But like he was suggesting, we may have to change the game to 4 quarters in order to get it done. Well, the Americans would absolutely love that. And the other suggestion was that to play the games at 9:00 in the morning, which actually wouldn't be too bad from a point of view of a British audience, because they'd be in the afternoon here. But it wouldn't be great for the attendances, which already haven't been very good, Alex Crook.
Just you were talking there, I was having throwbacks to the days before Wimbledon put a roof on centre court, and when you were watching the coverage during typically rainy British summers, you had to see if there was an R in the corner, if it was live tennis, or if they were showing you replays from earlier in the day. I mean, that might well be the case, that they have to get replays of earlier games ready. But don't talk to me about 4 quarters and kicking off at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's a problem. It's another problem that FIFA basically have selected the wrong venue for the World Cup. It shouldn't be being played in America in the summer.
Do you know what, Sam? Just one thing, and I can't remember if it's the Chelsea-Benfica game or another game, but even the local sides where they were playing in the stadium don't play at that time because it's well known in the afternoon they do have sort of thunder and lightning. They always play in the evening. So
it's
even
FC Charlotte.
So even that is easily solvable. But this game should have been in the evening. I personally think the broadcasters won't have it. Honestly, I personally think it will be, no, you cannot play in these stadiums. You need to find a place where it's more reliable. It's one thing to be hot and humid, and I think it's wrong. And I agree with Enzo Moresca. I don't think the USA is a perfect place for it, the Club World Cup or the World Cup. So it's one thing, the heat and humidity, but it's another thing for things to go on for 2 or 3 hours. And I'm telling you now, the big broadcasters, I'm sure, are already on the phone saying, we're not having this. You find a location where at least we can schedule this game within a certain time.
Well, they can't now, Scott. They cannot change it. It's all set in stone. Plans are in place. Venues have been awarded. Investments have been made. Big money is involved in terms of rebuilding these arenas. People have booked hotels, and broadcasters from around the world have built studios, and there's too much investment. You're stuck with this tournament that is going to be in this country, in these places. The only thing that you can influence now is kickoff times. It's the only thing you can change. It's the only thing you can do. And they've got to be very judicious about the way they pick the kickoff times. They've got to be a little bit more generous to the players by starting things either earlier or a lot later in order to ensure that we don't run into as many problems as we have done. I saw it the other week where there was a player, a Juventus player, I think, who ended up not with heat stroke, but certainly had signs of dehydration during the tournament. I think there was certainly a situation where, players, you could tell, desperate to take on water after 20 minutes because it was just cripplingly hot. Players haven't been able to train because of it. So, look, the United States is a fantastic country. It's got some brilliant arenas, some great stadiums, and a really strong football community, which has been sort of diminished because, this tournament hasn't been as well attended as the World Cup will be. And the World Cup will be well attended. But you've got to make sure that if you're putting on the event, you make the conditions to ensure that the big performers, the main players, can actually do their job. You can't have an event where players cannot perform at the highest level, or you don't create the conditions for the players to play at the highest level. Otherwise, you're undermining your own tournament.
Well, that happened in '94, didn't it? I mean, it wasn't a high-quality tournament. The final was absolutely dreadful between Brazil and Italy, and the conditions definitely played a part in that.
Sounds like Crookie, by the way, desperate for dehydration. On
Do you know what? I'm actually going to move tables because I'm now in the sun. I want to be in the shade.
Wait there just for a second, right? Just get a little bit ready for a second. So we're going to go off and just take some more highlights in just a second, and we'll take a break very quickly so that you can move locations.
He's wearing a dark T-shirt, Sam. Why are you wearing a dark T-shirt that attracts the sun?
We're slightly worried about him. Okay, Crookie's going to move. He doesn't listen to anybody. We said just wait there for a second. We'll go to a break. He got up anyway because he just does what he wants. Alex Crook. He does what he wants. We'll find out what's happening with the transfer situation, what's happening with Crystal Palace, all in just a second. And Keith Andrews, the new manager of Brentford, has been speaking this week too. Are you happy now, Crook, by the way? You're okay? You're right? You're settled? You're fine?
I'm good. Yeah, well, for now. Yeah, the sun is chasing me around this morning.
What, the sun's moving? You're joking. I didn't realise it did that. The lobster was boiling in Parma. The heat was on Crystal Palace at the beginning of the summer about their participation in the Europa League. That's not the case anymore, despite this sort of delayed decision in awaiting the outcome of whether or not they're going to be able to participate. Is it, Crook? I mean, surely this is just a formality now.
You'd have thought so, given that John Textor has sold his shares. Obviously, you've got the situation at Lyon where I think he's resigned from their board as well. So, yeah, if there's any common sense in the world, they will be allowed to play. Although the ruling is they judge it, UEFA, on where Palace were on March the 1st, I think is the date. And obviously Textor was a shareholder then, albeit not one with overall control of the football club. But I really hope, and I've said it before for Palace fans, that common sense does prevail. They've won the FA Cup. They've qualified for Europe for the first time in their history. If UEFA were to make an example of them, when you look at the number of UEFA clubs who have these multi-club ownership models, I think it would be an absolute travesty.
And the amount of time that we spend talking about PSR, multi-club ownership, rule changes and VAR and auxiliary stuff that isn't the game drives me insane sometimes, Scott. I mean, the idea that this is a debate is ridiculous, isn't it? This is a football club that have never won a major trophy before. How are they supposed to be in a position to predict that they were going to do that at the beginning of March? They weren't. They've now devolved their interest with John Textor. Let them get on with it. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. But I think both you and I are very much to the laws of the game when it comes to decisions being made on the pitch, and the rules are rules off the pitch as well. Look, I do hope it is sorted. I think it will be. I hear from people more in the know than me that it can be. But they knew the rules. So if they were the rules at that particular time, then UEFA have the chance to do it. I mean, it's one thing still having the chance to do it. It's another thing actually doing it. And the fact that Textor's sold his shares now, I think it'd be really, really harsh. It was a wonderful season for Crystal Palace. I think Oliver Glasner is an amazing manager. I really do. And for them to win the first major trophy in their history when they couldn't do it before and they've been so close, and I enjoy their football. I'd love to see Crystal Palace in Europe. But the bottom line is, mate, I mean, look, rules are rules, and UEFA have the ability to do that if they want to.
Former Charlton left back, Scott Minto. Let's hear from Brentford's new manager, Keith Andrews. He addressed the media yesterday for the first time since replacing Thomas Frank, and he's feeling calm about potential departures.
The way of the footballing world, you always have to expect the interest in good players. I think that's just natural. The way this football club has worked, it's never really been a problem. Players come and players go. That's just the nature of it. Ultimately, I want the best possible players in the building, and we've got phenomenal players in the building that we will continue to improve and develop. And what will be on that front.
Keith Andrews, someone that Scott Minto knows well. Interestingly, I thought Crook, he sort of talked quite positively, didn't he? He held himself quite well. He said we've got phenomenal players still in the building. Our players will come back and they'll be settled, and we have to accept that players come and go. That's football. That's just the way it goes. We'll be okay. What do you make of their chances, and what does a good season look like for Brentford now?
I thought he spoke well, Keith Andrews. Obviously, because he's been part of the Brentford setup for some time, he would have been aware what was going to happen this summer, that they'd be changing goalkeepers, that Brian Mbeumo probably will leave the football club, and I do still expect him to be a Manchester United player, despite what the director of football came out and said at the same press conference, that there was every chance Mbeumo will stay. I would be surprised if he doesn't pitch up at United in the coming days. Keith Andrews' appointment has divided opinion amongst Brentford fans. There's been a lot of negativity, actually, on social media. We had Martin O'Neill in the studio when I broke the news that he was the leading contender. He didn't speak in glowing terms about him, but this is a tried and tested model for Brentford, right back to when they hired Mark Warburton. He was assistant and obviously stepped up to the top job. The same with Thomas Frank when Dean Smith left. So Matthew Benham, who crunches the numbers, he will have seen something in Keith Andrews to suggest that this can be a seamless transition. I do fear for Brentford a bit, not solely because they've appointed a rookie manager, but I think if you lose a player of the calibre of Mbeumo, and he might not be the last to head for the exit. Obviously, Christian Norgard is going to go as well, the captain to Arsenal. They're two big players to replace.
Listen, I think Alex Crook is a sensational journalist. He breaks a lot of stories that other people don't and would love to. But to say that he may well have just slightly misrepresented the great Martin O'Neill there is probably an understatement. It wasn't that he didn't give him a glowing reference. What he did is he exposed the fact that Keith had given him stick when he was the Republic of Ireland manager for relying too much on set pieces, and then went to be a set piece coach himself. That was what he was discussing. And then he said he's going to find out that talking a good game is not as easy as orchestrating a good game. That's all he said. He didn't say anything else derogatory. He just said, he just bit back at the criticism that Keith had given him and said now it's his chance. He's got an opportunity in the Premier League to show that he can do it. So it wasn't that he wasn't giving him a glowing reference. It was that he just, he was just reveling in the possibility that maybe it might be uncomfortable for him too. Scott, you know him well. And he has got a job on his hands because those two players that have already shown an interest in leaving, Norgodd's already gone, and when Burma, we know is probably likely to go, are huge influences on the club. Norgodd in particular, I think, actually is a huge influence behind the scenes and on the pitch.
Absolutely. And your question of what's a good season for Brentford, I think is fourth and bottom. And I know that Brentford fans won't like to hear that, but I don't care who goes into Brentford. One, with Mbeumo going. Two, with Norgodd going. Two massive key players on the pitch. But three, Thomas Frank going. That's probably the biggest one. It's almost like I think most managers would struggle coming in. So I wish Keith all the very best. I thought he came across really well in the press conference. I think he spoke well. I think he handled all the questions well. I think he sort of said he's been gearing up for this moment. Yes, he was, probably 2 or 3 years ago wouldn't have expected his first job to be in the Premier League, but he has been literally mapping this out for the last decade, probably. So it's a wonderful opportunity. Clearly he impressed Matthew Benham a lot, but I think it's more than just how you present yourself. I think it's the what he has already done behind the scenes. And to call him a set piece coach, I'm sorry, he's a player who's won tens and tens of caps for his country, a very good midfielder, an excellent talker, a great reader of the game, brilliant with data analysis, who happened to be for a short period of time a set piece coach in official words. And I bet you he did more than that at Brentford behind the scenes. So he's not a set-piece coach. People will jump on it. And I'm sure if things don't go too well, and it's not the easiest of starts either. So, I worry for him there. But he's a strong character. He's an excellent coach. And I wish him all the very, very best. But honestly, it's fourth and bottom I'd take for Brentford right now.
Yeah, Crook mentioned that he didn't think that the Brentford fans were too enamoured by the appointment. I do think we're in a sort of period, though, where a lot of fans don't like any appointment unless it is a real blockbuster name that comes through the door. So I think, give him time, see what happens, and then judge him over what happens over the first sort of 6 months of the season. If he gets that long, I hope that he does. Let's talk about transfers. We really need, we've got one of those fun, cool jingles that they have on the radio when we do Crookie's transfer roundup. What's that one where you got the snake in the boot and all that kind of stuff? I know it's a bit of a Mickey take, and I didn't like it at the beginning, but you are a bit of a cowboy, so let's crack on. Before we get into specific stories on transfers, it is the 1st of July as we record this in the sunshine across Europe. And it's a reset of the PSR period. Alex Crook, explain what that means and who's in good shape and who's in bad shape. And tell us, because it was a big day yesterday, did the sale of Aston Villa women go through in time to save them from a PSR disaster? I think they sold it to themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that again is an absolute joke, isn't it, really? And just it exposes all that is wrong. And you've mentioned it already. We spend too much time talking about PSR and off-the-pitch financial issues. But what we didn't get this year that we did last during the European Championships was this ridiculous scenario where clubs were trading young, not very good players in some cases for huge amounts of money in order to stay on the right side of the line. So that suggests to you that actually maybe PSR is working, that clubs, Villa aside, have got their houses in order.
No. It doesn't suggest that. It suggests that they've got the loophole and they've found a different way of raising the cash by selling infrastructure and real estate and putting it through. Women's team at Chelsea being sold, hotels being sold at Chelsea, Aston Villa selling the women's team, Newcastle doing a similar transaction. That's how they've got round it. It's not that they've got their house in order and they've got their balance sheet sorted. It's just that they found a different loophole as opposed to sending young kids away for 30 million quid when they're not worth it.
But you're talking only about a handful of clubs there, so the bulk of them, I think, are being run properly. I still think Villa are going to need to sell one big player in the new PSR period, having missed out on the Champions League. And wonder if that might end up being Ollie Watkins, still on Arsenal's list. Manchester United, I think, are showing some interest in him if they can move on Rasmus Højlund. And maybe they might feel the time is right. I don't know who they would bring in to replace him, having obviously sold Duran, but certainly I think Watkins is going to be an interesting one over the course of the next few weeks.
J Pedro to Chelsea. I mean, some suggestions that it sort of came out of nowhere. They had been linked with him before, actually. And it's not. It's actually quite an odd road, isn't it, to go from Brighton to Chelsea? That doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, it's not come out of nowhere. I wrote a story about this in my notebook 2 or 3 weeks ago now, saying that Newcastle feared a Chelsea hijack. And I think their concern was always that even if they did agree a fee with Brighton, they had an offer in excess of £50 million rejected, then Chelsea would just match it. And João Pedro's preferred destination was to go to London. It's a big year for him because I think he's got his sights set on leading the line for Brazil at the World Cup. But I don't really know where he fits in at Chelsea because Liam Delap is that out-and-out number 9. Obviously, you've got Nicholas Jackson as well, who could play out wide. João Pedro could do the same. And again, and I've mentioned this before, I wonder if Chelsea might sell Nicholas Jackson now. I don't see how those three really play in tandem.
Scott, I mean, this is a big question. Where the hell does João Pedro fit into that team? They must be thinking about selling Jackson, at least, or Madueke, because I can't work out. You've got Delap, you've got João Pedro, you've got Cole Palmer. I mean, those three have almost now got to be on the team sheet. You've got Moises Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, and Romeo Lavia, who they're still trying to crowbar into the same midfield anyway. There's too many players here that Enzo Moresca has got to try and get into 11. It's not going to work. There's going to have to be a lot of rotation, a lot of patience, and that's not always easy to manage.
Well, we've been saying for some time they need a new goalkeeper. What's he like in goal?
Well, that's a good shout. He's good at. It was good at throwing his elbows around last year. That's for sure.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, look, I get the sort of the Jamie Gittins. Look at Mudryk and Sancho. Not available and one gone. I kind of get one of them, but I don't get the precise João Pedro. I think it's a really good point. I don't know whether Chelsea are thinking it or whether Crookie's just come up with it himself, but. Would they sell Nicholas Jackson? Because I've been saying for a long time they need, a senior goalkeeper, a senior centre-half and a senior centre-forward. But Liam Delap was an absolute no-brainer, but he's still potential. So if you get rid of Jackson, then you can bring, start joining the big boys of an Osimhen, a Sesko, a Gyökeres. But João Pedro, for me, I don't get that one. It must be another accountancy thing that somehow they think it's a really good deal. Get the players in where they need to strengthen the spine of the side and get it where they really, really is needed. And look, we've spoke about it before. That is the massive difference between combining the Premier League and the Conference League and the Premier League and the Champions League. So they're going to need strength in depth for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We'll see where else they do strengthen. But I would say with getting the players they've got in already, that's not the area where they need to really focus on.
You've got that setting on your phone, Sam, that when Alan Brazil does a last-minute no-show for breakfast, even if your phone is on silent, you get that call. Tony Bloom must have the same setting for Todd Bowley and Burdad Egbali. Every time they call, whatever he's doing, he makes sure he picks up the phone because he's probably going to make 50 million quid out of it.
Oh, I mean, the other complete quirk of the summer is the fact that because the transfer window's open, Chelsea can register him for the second phase of the Club World Cup. So he may well make his debut as quick as Friday night, Crook.
Yeah, that's the aim. I think he's already completed his medical. He needs to be registered by July the 3rd. So that's, Thursday in order to play in the latter stages. And I think that's why Chelsea made their move pretty quickly.
Amazing, really, isn't it? Another one that Newcastle have missed out on, I think it's harsh on them because they are in a situation where they wanted to strengthen with J Pedro, with Ilanga and with James Trafford. They haven't got any of those. Are they going to get any through the door, Crook?
Well, they've missed out on Dean House and Brian Mbeumo as well, having held talks with both of those players. I sense that Trafford probably will end up there, although there's a big gap in valuation between what Burnley want and what Newcastle are willing to pay at the moment. Forest have made it very clear that it's going to take 60 million quid to sign Ilanga, so I'm not sure that is going to happen. But there's a sense of frustration, I think, in the amongst the coaching staff. They're not at the moment able to get these deals over the line. And as of today, they don't have a sporting director to do the deals because Paul Mitchell left the club on the last day of June.
I think they'll be all right in that department, don't you?
Well, I think Eddie's going to have to do a lot of the legwork himself, which maybe he'd prefer.
Let's have a quick word about Calvert-Lewin, because he's a free agent now.
Well, he's someone that Eddie Howe's always had an attraction towards. They were very close to signing him probably 2 summer transfer windows ago now. Some mention that maybe if Manchester United don't manage to sell Rasmus Højlund and Calvert-Lewin is available on a free transfer, that they may pull the cord. I don't think he's going to be short of offers, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Obviously, the big issue is his injury record, but when you actually get him on the pitch and fit, his goal return is all right.
Very good. Well, yeah, they went through a period, didn't he? When the last time he was fit for a long period, he went without a goal, didn't he? I think he almost went 8 months without scoring a goal, so that was an issue. But before that, he was brilliant, and his expected goals tally actually during that period was exactly the same as when he was scoring 14 for the season. So he gets himself in the right positions, that is for sure, and maybe a change of scenery might help him. England under-21s won the European Championship for the second time in succession on Saturday night. It was a terrific performance against the Germans, a brilliant winning goal from Jonathan Rowe, a great performance over the tournament from Harvey Elliott. In fact, the overall performance of the whole team was superb, and I was lucky enough to be watching it at St George's Park with lots of coaches and lots of people that are involved in the FA, and the delight, the pride in the fact that the whole infrastructure of the entity that is St George's Park have produced this team for a second time that won the European Championship, I think is significant. The game craft was excellent, I thought, throughout the course of the tournament. The game against Spain, they played so well. The game against Germany late on, they had to use some real resolve because they were 2-0 up, and then they conceded 2 goals, which would have cost them mentally. It would have been a setback. That would have been difficult to deal with, but they managed to get over the line. And then that terrific moment where Jonathan Rowe scores with a diving header. Is there a better way to win a European trophy, to score a diving header in extra time, Scott? I mean, you played for the England under-21s. It's a brilliant achievement, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a fantastic achievement. And look, you've got to say, first of all, well done to Lee Carsley, because that is an unbelievable achievement. And in this particular tournament, no Delap, Harwood Bellis, Branthwaite, Bellingham, Wharton, Lewis, Gittins. So, that's over half the team that you could easily claim would be in the starting 11 in the final. I thought they were a little bit underwhelming in the group stages, but isn't that the perfect example about how to grow into a tournament? I thought the game against Spain was the one where everything kind of clicked, got through the Netherlands, and then the first half against Germany in the final, they were just absolutely superb, and it could have been 3 or 4 and should have been 3 or 4. The Germans never give up, so they had to show the resilience there. Worried at the start of extra time that actually the Germany had the momentum. Fair play again to Carsley. He took off Jay Stansfield and brought on Jonathan Rowe, so there wasn't an out-and-out number 9. And that if it had done that in the senior side and it hadn't worked, then he would have been absolutely given pelters. But that's what managers are paid to do, to find a way to win games. And the story of Jonathan Rowe as well, where, he was caring for his sick mum at a very young age. He was travelling 3 hours a day one way and 3 hours a day the other to Norwich. And just stories like that, when you hear them, you just think that's absolutely fantastic. So on every single level, well done to everybody connected with the England under-21s.
Absolutely. Congratulations to them. Obviously, I mentioned Harvey Elliott right at the beginning. Where's he going to end up, Alex Crook?
Well, he's not short of suitors, unsurprisingly. Up to half the Premier League, I think, would take him. RB Leipzig, obviously you've got the Jurgen Klopp connection there. Bayer Leverkusen mentioned to me as well. And I think Liverpool were quite happy to see him crowned player of the tournament. They had a big valuation on his head anyway, of around £40 million. That may just have gone up. But I think he'll move. I think it's going to be difficult for him to force his way into the Liverpool team. I think he'll join a very good club. And I can see him, actually, if he does go to one of those German teams, doing very well in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, I think you might be right there. Thank you very much, a sweaty, salty lobster.
No problem. I'm off to boil.
Yeah. Scotty, what Club World Cup games are you doing this week?
Oh, mate, it's mental. So I'm doing the Chelsea Palmeiras one at 2 a.m. And then I'm going to nip to Sandown to go to the Coral Eclipse. And then in the evening, I'm going to do the 9 o'clock kickoff, of which, as we're speaking, we still don't know what the game's going to be. The quarterfinal.
Right. Oh, interesting. Okay.
I'm making my debut. They've called upon me for the quarterfinal between PSG and Bayern Munich.
I'll be missing you, mate. I'll be missing you. I'm not doing that one.
Finally getting out of the sunshine. That's good. I'm in the I'm at the European Championships, the Women's European Championships. I've got quite a few games this week, including Wales, Netherlands a little bit later on in the week, and Germany against Poland as well. Kicks off with Iceland against Finland, and Switzerland against Norway is live on talkSPORT on Wednesday night, the opening game, the official opening game of the tournament, although it's not really the opening game of the tournament, it's actually the second game of the tournament. That's 8 o'clock on Wednesday. Thursday night, Spain against Portugal from the Women's Euros is also live on talkSPORT 2. Always with all the football, all the time. You know it makes sense. It's got to be talkSPORT. See you next week.